As you know, our guest is former SEAL Rob O'Neill. Give you a little bit of background about Rob. Rob has more than a dozen deployments with over 400 combat missions. He was decorated with 2 Silver Stars, 4 Bronze Stars with Valor, a Joint Service Commendation Medal, 3 Presidential Unit Citations, and 2 Navy Commendations with Valor. So today, Rob is going to come up and join us, talk about what it takes to be successful in high-paced, high-performance teams, and he's going to be drawing on some of his experiences as a SEAL and some of the stories in the book. Okay, cool. So let's make Rob feel welcome.
Thank you. All right, buddy.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it. Thanks. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So first off, thanks for coming today, Rob.
Absolutely.
The book, it's not just a story about the bin Laden raid, right? It's a story about a kid from Butte, Montana, and his journey with the SEALs. Can you tell us how it all started?
Yeah, the book itself is, I was part of the mission to go after Osama bin Laden, but it came after a long career and a lot of stuff we did. And I joined the Navy by accident. Like, it was because of a girl. I had to get away from her in Butte, Montana. Because I was 19 years old. I knew everything about life. I had my heart broken, like we've all done, and I figured I'd join the Marine Corps. And I tried to join the Marine Corps, but the Marine recruiter wasn't in the office. That's the easiest way to get out of Butte, Montana, is to join the military. We just got pavement and power lines and stuff up there. Kidding. But I went to join the Marine Corps. He wasn't in the office, and 2 of my friends that were about 2 or 3 years older than me, named Ben and Jim, were Marines, and they said the Marine Corps is actually part of the Department of the Navy. It's just the men's department. Was one of their jokes. So I went in the Navy guy because he would know where the Marine was, all by accident, and he actually talked me into being a Navy SEAL, even though I didn't know how to swim. So I remember standing in front of him thinking, I'm 19 years old, I'm kind of naive. This guy's a professional recruiter. Why is he going to lie to me? So we signed it. I found out SEALs do swim. I found out I was in a pickle. But the point of the whole book is I ended up being that naive kid that had his heart broken, joined the military, became a SEAL, learned how to swim the hard way. I was involved with a lot of missions. 17 years later, I'm in bin Laden's bedroom, part of one of the greatest teams the military's ever assembled. And the whole point is, of the book is, it doesn't matter what you look like or where you're from. You can do anything you want. You just need to work hard. You need to believe in yourself and certainly avoid the negativity. Negativity breeds and has a tendency to spoil things. If you can stay positive, be good to each other, you can do anything. That's the whole premise of the book. Yeah, cool. I appreciate that. Thanks. It's awesome. And I was going to say, if you haven't read the book yet, there's a spoiler alert. Bin Laden does die at the end of it.
Okay, so as you start SEAL training, one of the major hurdles is buds, right?
Yep.
So any TV show or book I've read, it's just a hugely demanding kind of a way to weed out some of the candidates early in the SEAL process. And the mental fortitude it takes is just so impressive. So can you give the audience an idea of how intense that process is and what your mental strategy is to survive that?
Yeah, BUDS is the course that every Navy SEAL needs to go through, and it stands for Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL Training. And it's the one that you see on a lot of the TV shows and a lot of the it's in a lot of books. It's the hardest military training in the world. From the first day to the end. Now there's about 3 or 4 months prior to the first day, if that makes any sense. But once you start, it's 26 weeks. And the beginning of it, the first 9 to 10 weeks is all calisthenics. So it's like, the workout starts at 5 a.m., which means you got up at 4 or whatever, and the class gets together, gets a full head count. The workout starts at 4 or 5. You work out to about 6:30, go to breakfast, then you come back and you'll do like 2 hours of log workouts, which means you got these couple 100-pound logs where you're working out with six guys each holding a log, doing different drills. Through negative reinforcement, teaching you that if one guy doesn't pull his weight, then the team will fail. And then you'll rest and change into something and have a 7-mile conditioning run in the soft sand, followed by a 2-mile timed swim in the ocean. Then you run to the pool, which is 1.5 miles away, swim there, get tied up, thrown in, do different drills. You do this all day long, every single day. And something funny too that no one seems to realize is, like, from where you do these workouts to the galley, which is where you eat, it's a mile away. So no matter what, you're running 6 miles a day just to eat. It's not like, I love this building. Food's 300 feet away at all times. That's not a bad gig. But yeah, it's a tough course. One of the hardest parts is called Hell Week, which is where they wake you up for training on Sunday, late morning, and then you do that kind of training around the clock every day until Friday. So you don't sleep. It's miserable. It's so bad, they keep you covered in salt water and sand the entire time. That by Wednesday morning, your skin is so soft that every part of your body that touches cloth starts to bleed. So, and you're wearing clothes. So you just become a bloody, sloppy mess. It's a horrible time. Right now, I think it's 85% of the people who try it do not make it through.
Wow.
And then that's the initial testing to try to become a SEAL. After that, it's another year until you get your trident and become a SEAL. More advanced tactics, small unit stuff. Tendencies of your other people and all that. But it's a tough course.
So once you finished your training after BUDS, you make it onto the SEAL teams. That brought you to a couple of different deployments, and one of those was Afghanistan.
I got there pre 9/11.
Okay.
So my first 4 deployments were actually to a lot of Europe, a lot of Africa, some of the Middle East. The only jobs we really had going on as far as special operators were like Kosovo, Bosnia, Liberia. There was a few things where we had to go help with the embassies. Generally, they were training with Allied Special Forces in case of contingencies, like the stuff that we actually saw after 9/11, the stuff in North Korea right now, training with our allies. A lot of because we were SEALs, we'd work with people called the Special Boat Service, the SBS, and the Brits in the UK. We'd work with some of our Northern Africa allies, some of our United Arab Emirates, Norwegian Jaegers, things like that. But we didn't start I didn't go to Afghanistan until after 9/11.
Okay, gotcha. So when you did get to Afghanistan, though, in the book, it seemed like it was a new environment for a lot of people. It was a little ambiguous. Can you talk us through how you were able to make decision-making processes and strategy decisions in an ambiguous environment like that?
Yeah, it was too. We'd never really been to war as a nation since Vietnam, and we'd never been in a war like this, a certain counter-terror, counterinsurgency type operation like in Afghanistan. And when we first started going there, we realized that the way you're going to win that, not win that, but make it more stable, I guess, would be you need the locals to be on your team. You need them to like you. And a lot of people say hearts and minds. I think that gets overused. More minds than anything. And what we were trying to be innovative, and we realized that if we can make their lives better, we can get them on our team. And how do you make someone's life better? They're family first. You want to help them support their family, so you got to give them a job. So we would find a spot with some of the money we were given, and we'd get what's called a safe house. So you buy a building, make it a safe house, then you hire first security. So you actually have interviews with locals that know how to use guns. So they're your security. Once you vet them, you hire plumbers, make your place better. You're hiring cooks, hiring all kinds of stuff like that, drivers. And then we actually expanded it to going out in the towns, shopping in the bazaars, eating at the restaurants in Afghanistan, getting to know the neighbors and their children, so that if a parent sees you getting along with their kids, they're going to try to protect you as best they can from people like the Taliban, like Al-Qaeda, through anything, because it's not just bombs and bullets, it's human intelligence. People that go to the internet cafes and the coffee shops, they're hearing stuff from other people. They're talking to their cousins who hear from the Taliban, intel change like that. So it was working for a while. I felt like we had it won over there for a long, long time, until the issue is a lot of government agencies, that they're not innovative, and they love to say this is the way we've always done it. And they do what's called a surge. I'm sure people have heard about that. It kind of worked in Iraq. It worked in, Europe in World War II. Yeah. It didn't work in Afghanistan. And just, I remember seeing the training, the process of that, how it's not going to work here. Did you even explain it to the bosses before it happened? Like, okay, we have these safe houses. The locals like us. We're shopping in the bazaars, and they decided this is like big military, big government. Well, let's get a base here, and we'll build walls, and we'll pull everyone out of the city, and you can live there. And then the only people driving outside will be the scared 20-year-old guy that's never been to war, so he's driving fast and hitting people. And if you want to shop, we'll bring 5 vendors into the base, and then they can sell. But now they up their prices by 800%. These people get nothing. They see that happening. They're upset. They're rich. They're like, you sort of see what's happening. You're going to become what's known as occupiers, and that's how you get in a quagmire 2017.
Yeah.
So, but it was interesting to see both sides of it, and actually kind of a business-like team building and almost local leadership, and just in a military aspect. So that's kind of where we learned that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Now,
that was a long answer, sorry.
So by late 2000s, you made it to Senior Chief Petty Officer, right? Can you tell us what skills and leadership traits you feel like developed the most from when you first got to the SEAL teams against when you were a Senior Chief?
Yeah, what developed the most, and it wasn't just, experience doesn't necessarily come from a classroom, it comes from on-the-job training, and it comes from watching both your peers and your superiors, how they're gonna act. And one thing that I noticed is I was on a lot of different teams at a lot of different times, and the teams that performed at the highest levels were teams that communicated but got along with each other. And I remember watching bosses of mine that were so senior to me, they didn't even need to acknowledge me, but they would say good morning, please, and thank you for normal work. Not all the time, but when it was legitimate compliments just to make you feel like you're part of the team. But we notice when people want to be where they're working and truly respect each other, that the team works harder. So what we learned about it is that one of my tactics was I would, even if I had a decision made as one of the team leaders, I would always ask my people for their input for two reasons. One, they would maybe have a better idea than I did, but they also felt like they're part of the solution. Mm-hmm. So morale is high, and people skills is one of the major reasons we were a very successful team.
I think a tricky thing to do sometimes is balance over-planning with micromanaging.
Yes.
The Bin Laden raid, from what I read in the book, it seemed like every contingency plan and every detail was planned out.
Yes.
How do you balance planning a mission out with that much detail and not micromanaging your people?
The first part is with the planning, the realization that the only time the plan exists is while you're planning. And then once you go to do it, everything's going to change. It's the whole thing. The only thing that's wrong is that nothing's wrong. And anything that you do can get you killed, including nothing, if that makes any sense. And then life, by the way, is what's happening around you as you're planning. A prime example was the Bin Laden raid. We had some of the best military minds in the country coming up with a plan because we knew what it looked like. So we came up with the perfect plan, and we rehearsed the perfect plan over and over. We trained with the helicopters in the day, and then eat something, then train at night. And when we're done at 11:30 midnight or whatever, go back and we stand around a table, perfect model of the thing, and talk about the perfect plan until we're talking about everything. Then we came up with the contingencies to try to what if everything. But we know the perfect plan is going to work. And then one night we're standing around very tired, and the boss said, okay, what's the worst thing that could happen? And the youngest guy in the room said, well, the helicopter could crash in the front yard. And he pointed right there, and everyone kind of looks at him like, you don't want to jinx it. We're like, hey, negative. Why would you say that? And he goes, I don't know, let's talk about that for 30 seconds. And we did, and that's exactly what happened. The helicopter crashed, and none of us knew it except the guys that crashed.
Yeah.
But we didn't know, we were in the other one. But yeah, the micromanagement process is I always ask people, are you teaching your people how to do their jobs, or are you trying to do their job for them? We were big believers in making sure our guys are prepared, teaching them exactly what we think they need to do, and then let it eat. Let them do what they should do. And like the whole rule of threes, we thought that you can do three major tasks at once. If you get to 4 and 5, you're going to start to you'll lose something. You'll get complacent. So you need to hand those tasks to someone else, knowing that they'll get to 3 or 4, and then hand the 4th one to another part of the team. And just the micromanagement slows everything down, and then there's over communication, which is the opposite of effective communication. And that's kind of the way we try to roll.
Gotcha. So leading into the raid, so night of, you're on the helicopter. Can you tell us what some of your thoughts were? I imagine it had to be very stressful. It's probably it's maybe the most important mission you've been on in your career at that point. So take us through your mindset there. How did you manage?
Well, this team that I was on, we were fortunate to right place, right time. We were part of the coalition that rescued the lone survivor, Marcus Luttrell. They made a book and a movie out of that. We were in Ramadi when the American Sniper, that story with Chris Kyle. We rescued Captain Richard Phillips from Somali pirates, and then we were picked to do the Bin Laden raid. So we'd been there quite a few times. We fought in a bunch of different theaters of war, but when they picked us for the Bin Laden raid, that was the one where we weren't going to come home. We knew that we were going to die or get captured, which is in that part of the world is probably worse than dying. So we went into it with the exception, with the expectation that the probability of dying very, very high. To the point where we were actually having conversations about, okay, we got to think about how are we getting focused for this. because I think I was like 35 years old, and it was like, well, what, if I don't go on this, what if when I'm 70, I look back and just have nothing but regret because I didn't go on that mission. I need to go on this mission. I need to accept the fact we're not coming home. When we were going to the last set of stairs, the guy who ended up being in front of me, the first guy up the stairs, and I was second, he actually asked me if he said, "Don't get me wrong, I'm going," because this is the thought process. I'm really going, but if we know we're going to die, why are we going? Which is legit. I'd want to war game that one too. But then the conversation we came up with was, well, we're not going for ourselves. We're not going for bravado or fame. We're going for the single mom who dropped her kids off at elementary school on a Tuesday morning, and 45 minutes later she jumped to her death out of a skyscraper because that was a better alternative than burning alive. And her last gesture of human decency was holding her skirt down so no one saw her underwear as she killed herself. She didn't want to do either one. And she wasn't supposed to be in the fight. We are, and that's the kind of conversations we're having. That's why we're going. So when we left, it wasn't a stress and it wasn't a fear. It was just a focus. You have the last meal with your kids, even though you can't tell them where you're leaving. But this is probably the last time I see them. Watching them eat a chicken sandwich, they go play in the playpen, but you're thinking about leaving for Pakistan in 2 hours. So very, very focused. Very good group of people that went.
So after the mission, the team got a visit from President Obama and Vice President Biden, right?
Yes.
How did that go?
That was like a 180 out from how we felt going in, because you got to figure everyone from the government agencies up to the White House especially, President Obama had to think, he made the call. I don't care about who argues on TV. He made the call, and he did it knowing that if we fail, not only is he, obviously he's losing some of his soldiers, but he's also losing his legacy. He's not going to win a second term. There's a thing called Desert One in 1980 when we tried to rescue hostages that were in Iran. Complete failure, horrible for that administration. And he knew he was not rolling the dice. He was very cool because he said, when I made the decision, I didn't know for 100% that Osama bin Laden was there, but I knew 100% you guys could go and find out and come back. So he had that on his mind, and that's a lot to think about along with all the other stuff that comes with being the president. And then we were thinking about death and this and whatever, and then we all got back, and we're all alive, so now we're all happy. So when we met President, I remember sitting there thinking, man, I wonder if I'm going to get starstruck. See, and I hear, hey, everybody, it's President Obama, like, yeah, so I'm starstruck. That's kind of, right? But it was neat, too. We had an issue when we brought, how I mentioned that you think you can be prepared for everything, but you're not. When we brought Osama bin Laden's body back, we were on the phone with the White House, and they asked, we're trying to make sure it's him. So they're like, well, measure him. He's 6'4", and we're like, okay. We had to lay down one of our snipers who was 6'2" next to him. So when we got to this place where we met President Obama, like a week and a half later, he says, so let me get this straight. You can destroy one of my $200 million helicopters, but you cannot afford a 99-cent tape measure. So it was very light. Everyone was happy, and it was like, for a whole week, I thought we might, as a country, finally agree on a bunch of stuff. So I was wrong.
One of the... You guys, I like the story you presented him with a gift, right? Did he have some words about that?
Yeah, that was really cool. He came there to, obviously, we wanted everyone to get along and have everyone in a room and have a great talk. And he came to present us with a Presidential Unit Citation, which is a gift that the president obviously gives you. And what we did for him, though, he didn't know, was one of our guys carried a full-size American flag on the mission, and as soon as we got back, we had it framed. And everyone, the operators, the pilots, the air crew, we all signed the back of it for him. And I hope no one's offended because the story's better with profanity, but we presented it to him, and he's looking at it, and that's like I could see the president sees a lot of stuff and knows a lot of stuff, but he kind of got shell-shocked, and he goes, wow, Mr. Vice President, do you think I can find a nice spot to hang that? And Vice President Biden said, yeah, that'll look nice in your presidential library. And he goes, nah, that's going to my fucking bedroom. Which kind of humanizes everybody. Pretty awesome.
So you started to touch it on a little bit. You said the pilots, the intel people, the SEALs themselves are on the mission. A lot of times we credit the success of this mission to the SEALs themselves, but can you give us an idea of the scope and how many teams are involved?
I mean, we as SEALs, we did go in there, but we were the end game. We were the final result of years of a team planning this. I mean, it starts off with, like I said, the human intelligence on the ground that led to there's a movie called Zero Dark 30 about a woman that found bin Laden, and it was pretty much true. The only difference is it was a group of women that found him, which I think is awesome. And they worked their butts off to make sure they tracked him to this one house. And so this government agency worked on him for years and years and years, pinpointing him, it was to the point where the one woman that the movie's about, when we got done, she was 100% right about every person in the house and where they'd be, which is just incredible, considering she can't even see in the house. So that, it was all, and then they had so there's your base team that comes up with the ideas, and then you've got your people that are selling it, so they've got to sell it to government agencies and the White House. So they're working that, different things, up to even the head of the Director Panetta was there. They had to sell him. He has to sell to the White House. All that works. Then the White House needs to go through their delegation process to include the National Security Council, the cabinet, the principals. They need to talk and then come up with a why or why not. They need to war game that, tell the president it's his call. And then, after all this happens, they come and tell us 3 weeks out, hey, you're going to go on a mission, and here's what you're going to do, and whatever. And then the pilots, they picked the 4 best pilots in the world, and they'd been flying for years and years, but they'd never even flown these helicopters that we brought in. So it's crediting these guys who fly. I don't think I even looked out the damn window, because they're probably 40 feet off the ground flying it. I'm not a pilot, but I'm pretty sure they were flying this fast. So I don't know what that is. Gas pedal. That's funny. And then, they just dropped us off, and then we just did even considering the people who invented the tactics that we used. Because we got on the ground, one helicopter crashes, they land us here, and we're just rolling off the communication, the tactics that a myriad SEALs, Green Berets, and Rangers came up with. So, it's just that the team was so big, and there's so many things that go along with it that they never really get the credit. And even with myself, when I got up to the top stairs and turned a corner, I just did what any operator would have done. It's not like I jumped through a skylight like I'm Charlie Sheen in that amazing movie Navy SEALs from 1989. Notice those SEALs are all handsome?
Yeah.
Tough crowd. So yeah, but the team is so big, and it was so many years old that it's just there's so much behind the scenes that a lot of people don't get credit for. But just to see it all work and come together the way it did, I'm probably talking too much, but that was just awesome.
So since leaving the SEAL teams, have you been involved with any projects or work that takes maybe that scope of people too?
Yes. One of the projects that I started a foundation to help special operators transition from the military to the private sector because, I got out at just over 16 years, and I knew that in order to get a pension, you need to do 20 for retirement in the Navy. I knew I wouldn't get it, but I knew it was time to leave. I didn't know what I was going to do. But I also didn't realize that I had skills that we'd acquired in the military that the private sector really wants. Team building, stress management, problem solving, outside the box thinking that you just kind of get with experience. And I found that in the private sector, and I was able to do it. But then I would go back to we've been at war for so long that a lot of people, men and women, don't want to do 20 years, and they kind of want to get out now. So we've started Your Grateful Nation that helps them do that. Because I know people, I'll tell them about it, and they'll say, well, I don't have any skills. I'd rather go back to war because that makes more sense than filling out a resume. And that's the way they think, because the government has no interest in transitioning these people. So we work with that, and now we give special operators individualized transitional support, starting off with, where do you want to live? What industry do you want to be in? And then we find that company, that city, and then we help them get a mentor, 6 to 9 months of training, and hopefully get them into the private sector, which the best email or call that I get is usually from a spouse of a veteran who says, Your Grateful Nation helped our family get its second career. So that's very fulfilling, and it's good to do that, and the veterans are just special people.
Now, a lot of people say that they felt a sense of closure when the news about bin Laden broke. Do you feel like you were able to add to that sense of closure, coming out as a SEAL who did it and writing the book?
Yeah, that was part of the reason I initially came out with the story. Not the book was for different reasons, but the story was because I donated the shirt that I wore on the mission to the memorial in Lower Manhattan, 9/11 Memorial. And part of the deal was I donated them that shirt, and then they give me a private tour of the place, without crowds there, which was neat. But what I didn't know is at the end of the tour, they had a room a little bigger than this, and there was 35 family members of people who lost loved ones, lost a wife or a sister, a brother, a son in the trade towers. And that's when they brought me up and they said, can you just tell them what happened? That's the first time in public I told the story about bin Laden. And just to see the reactions, to have them, they said there'll never be closure, but this helps with the healing. Because there's conspiracy theories everywhere. I mean, people, where's the picture? Bin Laden died in 2001, all this nonsense. But they said with finally a real face, a real name, this helps me heal. And I go down there quite a bit, and it's always something to go in the 9/11 memorial, especially in crazy times like now, and just realize what's important. And then you run into family members, and I've never heard the same story twice. It's everything from I had a woman tell me the story about her husband. She's on the phone. He's in the South Tower, and she's saying, just get out, just get out. I know the North Tower's hit, but just get out. And all of a sudden it goes blank, dead. And just to have those people tell me, if it helps them with the closure, and it can help hopefully thousands more with closure, then if all I need to do is tell a story, I'll do it. And I've assumed risk before, and I'll do it again.
Now, you're not the only SEAL who's written a book. A couple others have come out and they're on shelves now. Do you feel like some of those tier 1 operators, so SEALs, Rangers, Delta, are feeling a growing sense of responsibility to write these memoirs to educate the public a little bit?
I think people are. A lot of the operators are, and I think that's important. As long as it's done the right way, as long as it's approved. My book was the first one with the Bin Laden raid in it that was approved by the Pentagon, approved by the Department of Defense, and it was given to the agencies involved. So here's a story that they approved. As long as you're not putting anyone in danger, giving up tactics, I think it's important for history's sake. I mean, when George Washington crossed the Delaware to fight the Hessians on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, whichever it was, he had a biographer with him. We wouldn't know the story if he didn't. It's important to know what people did. And I hope everyone else on that was a part of the mission, they at least tell their story or come out with it. And because, there's going to be 23 different stories on the ground alone. And just to know what people did. There's a story I mentioned earlier that we didn't know the other helicopter crashed, and we somehow got into the thing. And I was in Bin Laden's house, and I'm in a room, and I'm watching my guys work. And I was fortunate that the normal plan didn't work because I just got a front row seat to watch this really cool mission happen. And as I'm in there, one of the guys whispered, we don't talk a lot, he said, something helicopter crashed. And I started thinking about the other helicopters we might have in the area, and I said, I'm thinking maybe we just lost 30 guys. And I said, well, what helicopter crashed? And he said, bro, our helicopter crashed in the front yard. You walked right past it. And I'm like, okay, good. And as we're having this conversation, one of our snipers who was doing like a lap around the place to make sure no one escaped, he's securing the perimeter. As we're doing that, he came to the spot where the tail was hanging over. We eventually saw the pictures because when we blew it up, it fell, and that's how they got part of the helicopter. So he was getting to that part, and he came over the radio and said, all right, everybody, be on alert. They are definitely ready for us. They've got a training mock-up of our super secret helicopter in the front yard. And there was a pause, and the boss said, well, no, jackass, that's ours. We crashed. And you hear the sniper go, yeah, that makes a lot more sense than the shit I was just saying. But there's stories out there of stuff that people did and how they were thinking, being so focused on this mission, knowing that these are great stories from great people.
So
That's a funny story.
I think that story brings us to another point.
Sure.
It seems like SEALs and operators have to have a really good sense of humor just to weather how hard the lifestyle is in the combat mission.
Yes.
There are a couple funny stories in the book. There's a Doorbell story. Are there any other stories that you thought were really funny that didn't make it in the book?
Yeah, there's a lot of special operators do have a good sense of humor because sometimes the training and the missions get so hard that you can't, you'll lose your mind if you can't laugh at yourself. It's like, what horrible decision got me here? So SEALs are pretty funny. It always comes to mind. We were talking over a lunch about how walking into a spider web at night is the best kung fu instructor on the planet. But every time someone does that or falls in a hole, someone from the back, you just hear, yeah, elite Navy SEALs, they should make a movie about this. But I don't know if it's in the book, and I don't think it does it justice, but there's the first time we realized SEALs were funny was the very first day of training. We all knew that we were getting into SEAL training, but we didn't know what it was, so they sat us down, about this many people, sailors that wanted to be SEALs, and they brought in, we didn't know what the course was, so a SEAL came in to tell us what to expect. So we're sitting there, and he came walking in. I think it was the first SEAL I'd ever seen. And he came walking in, camouflage pants, blouse and the boots, tight blue t-shirt, tattoos down to his knuckles. And we're looking at him like you're looking at me, except we are terrified. And he knew that. So we didn't know how serious he was, and he finally, he waited there in silence, and he finally said, "Looking good today, gents." "Not you, me." I know what you're thinking. I look a little tired. It's because I am. I was up all night. I had to get my wife out of jail. She was arrested for shoplifting. Earlier that afternoon, we were leaving the mall together. She had her arm around me. Security thought she was trying to steal an anatomy chart. So that's the first thing a SEAL ever said, and we're like, what is this complete psychopath talking about? But he was early and bored, and he was actually using our fear for his benefit. Anyway, that's a story. I don't know if you can tell that one in the book, because it's more visual than...
Yeah, I think it's in the book.
Oh, sorry for ruining the book.
Not to ruin the book anymore, but I really liked the Doorbell story. Can you tell about
Yes. This is, again, I'm a big believer that failure is a learning tool. People fail every single day, a lot. And as long as you acknowledge it and own it, you know, look yourself in the mirror. Why did I fail? What can I learn to teach my team? You can get something out of it. One thing we learned, and there is a lesson to this, we actually applied it, but we learned along the way that it's better to, instead of landing in a helicopter right next to the target and waking everyone up, you should land far away where they can't hear you and walk in. Instead of putting a bomb on the door, you pick the lock, and then you go inside. It's a lot quieter. There's a lot less collateral damage. Innocent people don't get hurt. So we were in Iraq in about 2007, and we're walking up to a house. But as we're walking up, and I was in front, I was the point man, I could see people moving in the house. Through the, see the windows, you can sort of hear them, so they know something's outside. Now, we're going after a high-value individual, so we're not going to leave. We do need to escalate the force. Now, we probably need to put a bomb on the door because they're bad guys and they're whatever. So I had to call up a breacher to get it. A breacher is a methods of entry guy. He will put a bomb on the door, put a saw through the wall, break the window, whatever. He's going to get you in to where you're going. So he came up and he wanted to put there's a bomb we use called C6. It's a 7-foot charge. You probably heard of C4 before. This is C6. It's bigger. And C6 it actually looks like a fruit roll-up, right? Same color, and it's about that big. And all you do is walk up to the door, and it's sticky. You stick it on, and you roll it down. It should be capped in. You walk to a safe distance, and you hit the magic button. Big, loud boom, the door opens. It's crazy. Now, he's going to do that with both sets of hands. So he has to put his weapon slings his weapon. So he needs security. That's going to be me. So I'm walking up to the door, and the door would open like this. So we know the hinges are here. He's going to put the bomb on the hinge side, so that'll push him off, and I'm just going to hold right here to protect him. As we're doing this, my boss, who's one of the best SEALs I've been working with for 13 years, one of the best SEALs, never screwed anything up, he's watching, and he wants to come up to observe, not to micromanage. He just wants to see what's going on, and that's when he put his elbow right on the doorbell. So it's like bing. And you can see he was thinking about it, like he doesn't want to move his elbow because the inevitable dong. Now the breacher had the bomb out, and he's like right about here. And he can't yell at him because that's his boss, so he just goes. Then you see his wheels spinning, and he's like fiscally conservative. He doesn't want to waste the taxpayers' money, so he starts reeling it back up, right? And he puts it in his pocket. Now I'm right here watching this whole thing go down. I don't want to be here anymore because what the bad guys do is they'll start shooting right through the door, and unlike Hollywood, bullets go through stuff, and I don't want to be a part of that equation. So I'm contemplating how to get us both out of this spot. Time's kind of moving slowly. The door opens. It's the goddamn terrorists we're looking for. So he and I share like an awkward thing. Oh, and I start thinking, oh, yeah. So I grab him. We cuffed him. And I had a knee in the small of his back, and I look at my boss and go, shit, let's just do that every night, right? So the moral of that, what we learned from that failure, because we've been working in Afghanistan for so long, there are not doorbells on houses in Afghanistan. There are in Iraq. Stay off the wall.
Good lesson, everybody out there.
Don't ring the doorbells.
So there have been a lot of films, books about high-profile missions you've been on. So obviously the raid on bin Laden, the rescue of Captain Richard Phillips, and lone survivor Marcus Luttrell.
Yes.
So as someone who was there in person, what was your favorite book or movie of those events?
Both Lone Survivor, my favorite book and movie. Those are The movie's really good. I would like to, I tell people if you want to know what a fight in the mountains of Afghanistan looks like, Lone Survivor. All good movies. I think they did a good job. Like I said, Zero Dark 30 did an excellent job showing the analysts behind everything and how their passion found him. American Sniper did a really good job showing some of the post-traumatic effects of the families. Excellent job with that. Didn't like the fake baby in that one. Did you see the fake baby? You remember that?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
I do,
Google,
yeah.
Google, get it? Google fake baby Lone Survivor. You see that.
Great.
Lone Survivor, excellent because, like I just mentioned, and then what was the other one?
You're not a Tom Hanks fan, then?
No, Captain Phillips, awesome.
Okay.
Because no, that was a good movie because they made SEALs look good.
Okay.
They did because you'll notice when the guys took the shots, the first thing they did, took the shots and they pulled their bipods up and left. They didn't say anything. There was no Hollywood lines because when that was over, I remember talking to the snipers. This is before Bin Laden, so I was like, you realize you just did like the single greatest thing in the history of the SEAL teams. And the sniper looked at me and said, cool, can we go home? That's just the way he acted. And it's funny too, they asked me how accurate that movie is. And I said, depends on who's asking. Like in a forum here, 70% accurate. Happy hour, if a lady asked me, 100% accurate, I took all 3 shots.
150, yeah.
Completely accurate.
So in a few minutes, we're going to go to Q&A in the audience. So if anyone wants to step up to the mics, if you have any questions, feel free. And while we're waiting for that, Rob, could you tell us about the creative process for the book? Was that a new hurdle for you writing in that form, trying to recall all these missions for so many years?
Yeah, it was new, but I'd been keeping a journal since training just because it seemed like the thing to do. Even though there wasn't a lot going on, I always thought maybe if there's a good story here, I could possibly tell it. So I was able to go through a lot of my old stuff and recall a lot of stuff. And I actually talked to some of my guys before it. And then just to sit down and go through it and kind of break it down. I initially wanted 11 chapters. It came out to like 26 or something like that. But just interesting stories, different parts of life. And yeah, it was the creative process was good because it seemed pretty normal. I had some help writing it, obviously, and then some great editors. So it was they could dot the I's and all that good stuff. It was fun.
Great. So I think we'll go to the audience for our first question.
Hello.
So you talked a little bit about transitioning people to the private sector. I'm wondering what parts of life as a SEAL, like management things, I mean, obviously not the big stuff, but what small elements of management or team building do you think really, really translate and anyone could take away when they're building a team?
Probably just accountability. We were big into saying you take care of your gear takes care of you. So the whole thing is like when you're done with something, clean it now, do everything like you do anything, and then keep an inventory of what you got, and then also know where your friend's stuff is in case they're not around. Because we would keep our stuff in, everybody had these huge lockers, and we keep our lockers in certain bags, and the bags were full of gear designed for a certain environment. So you have these different bags for like a water jump, land jump, high altitude diving, desert, jungle, all that stuff, and what's in it. And you just want to keep care of your stuff because you're gonna need a lot different stuff in the jungle than you will on a night jump into, Afghanistan or whatever. So just the accountability of your gear and knowing where your people are. And then the 2 beer limit was really good. Sure.
Do you have any tips for civilians for building up that mental dexterity that you talk about? That focus, that ability to push out that negativity and really focus on the goal.
Yeah. The biggest one is to the realization that you're probably not going to succeed on the first attempt. One of my legitimate answers to that too is funny. I don't keep making jokes, but I would say stay off of Facebook because that's where the negativity is. That just struck me as funny that comes to mind here again. Seriously, just like I mentioned earlier, failure is a learning tool. You're not going to make it every time, and chances are what you were planning it didn't happen anyway. I did mention all this stuff before, but just keep at it. And if you want to be good at anything, do it 1,000 times. Mm-hmm. Like people say, how do I get better at pull-ups? Oh, simple. Do more pull-ups. You'll be good.
So Rob, you actually have an interesting story on like repetition and learning things. Can you tell us about your dad and the free throws story?
Yes, my father and I played basketball every day. He played in college. I played in college, and one of our rules is when my season would end with whatever junior high or high school, our season would start. And we'd play 2 to 3 hours a day, but one of our rules is no matter, as soon as we finish, we don't get a leave until one of us makes 20 free throws in a row. So it would start with a make, and then one guy rebounds. You start with a make, and then you shoot until you miss, then you switch. And so it was 20 to leave the gym every day, but then it was 20 to get a steak dinner at the Derby in Butte, Montana. But once you got the steak, then it moved up by 25. So it's 20 to leave the gym, then 25 for a steak. Then it's 20 and 30, then 35, 40. And we got to a point where my father, I think he made 92 in a row,
Wow.
which was the family record for a week, because I made 105. But again, that's just that what we learned. That's how we learned how to shoot free throws, how to shoot weapons, and how to just the repetition.
Yep.
Do it again. Training, communication, repetition.
Cool.
I hope I answered your question.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next question on the right here.
Hi. This is something I've been really curious about. I mean, with you and the other SEALs that have put out books and then movies, you become famous after that. And, from the American perspective, you're a well-known hero. But from the opposition's perspective, you are also a well-known person. And who probably they have vowed revenge against after the various operations that you're involved in.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that?
No, that's fair. That's a good question too. That's a tough one because the realization is there. This mission was so high profile that the details got out in small circles right after the mission, because we flew out right after it was over back to Virginia. And by the time we got back, everybody on both, we have SEAL teams in Virginia and California. Every SEAL knew what happened and knew the names, and then it spread up to DC. I got a call from a friend who worked in the White House. They knew my name and all this stuff. So part of there's a lot of different reasons why you say anything. The book has nothing to do with this, but I believed it was better to know the threat's real than to stick my head in the sand and pretend it's not. Because it got out, I was aware right off the bat that something bad could happen. Now I took a lot of security precautions with my family, with my kids and stuff like that. And it's tough, it's hard, it's still hard on them. My kids don't have the same life they used to. They have more guns and dogs, which is cool. But yeah, it's a tough one. But again, I said, coming out with a story on television, I will assume the risk if I need to help with the healing process, because it's such a big thing. I've dealt with them before. I know what it's like, and it wasn't a one-day decision, and it's a tough one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Left side over here.
First of all, thank you again for coming and making the time.
Certainly. Thanks for having me.
I had a question for you. It seemed that online there were a few other Navy SEALs that were somewhat critical of you coming out as the individual operator who killed Osama bin Laden. So I was wondering if that kind of attitude is widespread amongst the SEALs, and if you thought
it differs. SEALs they're an odd group. Love them. I had some of my best times of my life were in the SEAL teams. What you'll notice about a lot of people in that, especially get to the command where I was, the Tier 1 team, everyone there is such an alpha that they're so used to being the person that doesn't fail that the way that I put it with them is if you took 10 of those guys and you put a dump truck full of cash in each one of their driveways, 5 of them would be pissed because their driveway's blocked. They're going to be mad about something, and if they're upset with me and they served, I respect their opinion. It's fine. I try to avoid negativity. I don't have time for it. I don't think trashing each other is going to help anybody. If they weren't there, I don't really care. Whatever. Get on with yourself. No, I mean, I listen to it, and yeah, I try to avoid some of the chat rooms. A lot of them are negative. A lot of them are positive. I talked to a little more than half of the guys that were there on the mission. They've come around. Time heals everything. And I've never come out and said, look at me, look what I did. It's like, look, I was part of a great team, got there because of great people and great women showed us where to go. I happened to turn the right corner, and here's my life story, and I'm just telling a biography. So, I mean, it's not none of it's easy, but that's why they have scotch.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, next question over here.
Part of being in the military means that you get orders and you kind of just have to follow them. Like, how do you reconcile this with kind of you having your own opinions or not being kind of in agreement with that, and kind of how has that impacted you?
That's a good question too, and it's I think what I've noticed the most is regardless. I worked for President Clinton, President Bush, and President Obama, And regardless of your political views or who's in charge, when you find yourself in a situation where you are dealing with a defined enemy and we're trying to kill each other, that it no longer becomes about the politics or even the war effort itself or the battle space. It becomes about fighting in that house with my teammates next to me. So it's kind of easy to do it that way. If there's a threat, I'm going to do what I can to eliminate the threat, and I'm trying to save my teammates. And then the military is really good about, even in the public eye, when you're still serving in uniform, you're not allowed to express your political views if you want to on the side. So that they try, and they try to keep it that way. I agreed with a lot of the stuff that we did, and I think that came with because we had trained for so long to fight before we fight that it was kind of like, I just want to get in the fight. I want to fight. I want to war because I want to fight. Now it's like with the Korea thing, it's like everybody take a wrap off. Let's not go nuking each other just because that's the word of the day. Those are big explosions. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I think, Rob, so that brings up another interesting point is the presence of like social media in today's military. It's kind of expected that your servicemen and women aren't going to go on and post their opinions politically, right? Mm-hmm. Have you ever seen issues with that, with certain troops being too active? And
yeah, there has been. People have been reprimanded and kicked out for a lot of social media stuff. We've had even SEALs get in trouble for writing books as they're still in the military, trying to get their, and again, the social media stuff just makes the world smaller. But yeah, people do get in trouble for that. And it's a fine line because yes, they're soldiers, but they're people. It's not like a video game where all of a sudden you have these cool guys that are doing this. Like they came from somewhere, they have their views, they grew up in a certain place, went to a certain school, and now they're here, and they will have their beliefs. So they do get in trouble for a lot of it too. I don't know. It's a tough one.
So on behalf of Google, thanks Rob for coming out.
Thanks, guys.